έχω τη χαρά να προσκαλέσω τον συνάδελφο Dimiter Peev, ο οποίος θα μας μιλήσει, θα μας ανακοινώσει, την ανακοινώση του υπό τον τίτλο «Χρόνος, Χώρος και Ιδέες, η προσέγγιση της Ψηφιακής Βιβλιοθήκης της Μονής Ζωγράφου στο Πανεπιστήμιο της Σόφιας».
First of all, I'd like to apologize that I don't speak Greek and I'll read in English. I'm learning Greek, but I'm far from the moment I'll be able to present something in Greek. The second thing I'd like to underline is that the purpose of my paper is just to tell the story of how all the thing began with the digitalization, and the second idea is what we'd like to have at the end. So the beginning was in the year 2009, when four researchers from the different scientific institutions in Sofia undertook a 10 days journey to Zografu Monastery, having the idea to propose to the Brotherhood to start digitizing of Slavonic manuscripts of the monastery. Those institutions were philological and theological faculties of Sofia University, St. Kliment Ohridski, Center of Slavic and Byzantine Studies, Professor Ivan Dujchev, and Father Kuzma Popovsky, a secular still at that point. The reason behind this adventure was a strong interest of the Bulgarian scientific community for the Slavonic manuscripts of the monastery. Structural changes in the library management gave us a flickering light of hope that the library of the Holy Monastery, which had stayed closed for researchers for more than half a century, could become accessible for the scientific community. We must admit that the results, as we see them today, went far beyond our boldest expectations. To admit, first of all, that the Brotherhood had already been taken the initiative, providing digitizing equipment and looking for proper people to fulfill the task called digitizing. It doesn't mean that after this first meeting we have got a clear idea and program what is to be done, and if we are the ones to do it. The only thing that was certain was that the answer to our proposal is not totally negative, and that there is a chance for something to be developed. For us, the future digitizing team, this first meeting was in a way the hopeful unknown. There were moments we wonder if we'd have the chance to see some of the emblematic manuscripts collections at all, but a day before our departure, brothers took us to the library and showed us the manuscripts we were longing to see. When we came back next summer, we had a task to start with the real digitizing of the Slavonic manuscripts. The initial team was reduced to two, Father Kuzma and me. We were not completely unexperienced in the task, as we had done digitizing of the Rila Monastery collection, the manuscripts of the Rila Monastery, Slavonic manuscripts, and that's why we had decided that the first thing to do would be the Zografu folio from the 10th century, as they were the oldest manuscript in the monastery and one of the oldest Slavonic manuscripts at all, comprising the monastic rules of Saint Vasily the Great. We had just finished the digitizing when the Igumenas came. On his simple question, "What are you filming?" we answered proudly, the Zografu folio, having the idea of the importance of this manuscript for the scientific world. "You should have started with an Evangelium," he suggested. So this was our first lesson in humility at the monastery. From that moment onwards, we came regularly 3-4 times a year, and in 2013 the Slavonic collection was a virtual fact, whatever this could mean. During our regular visits, the idea was born of a full digitizing of monastery manuscripts, Slavonic, Greek, and Romanian, and also the Psaltikis, Slavonic, Greek, and also Romanian. Our plans included digitizing of medieval documents, Greek, Slavonic, and Romanian, also Ottoman and old prints. It was not only digitizing. The monastery gradually developed a coherent idea of preserving its cultural heritage. Manuscripts and documents were removed in a modern repository, and the library received new spacious room equipped with a disinfection box for the books and electronic catalog. After the working day, during the evening conversations, our ideas began to crystallize. New editions of important manuscripts and documents were needed, and all this cultural treasure was to be explored. The first step in this direction has been made in 2012 with the edition of Slavo-Bulgarian history, historical text by Paisi of Hilendar from the year 1762. The original manuscript is kept in Zografu. The edition is a bilingual critical text with variants from 6 early witnesses on the left side and Bulgarian translation with extensive historical and linguistic comments on the right side. A series of indexes, tables, and genealogical schemes are included, which makes its comprehension easier for the readers. The approach applied was grandly scaled due to the understanding of the brotherhood that only the full contextual connotation, theological, historical, philological, and so on, could provide in-depth comprehension of the importance of this text for the modern time historical and cultural phenomena in Bulgaria and on the Balkans. I'm not going to tell more about the ongoing preparation of other editions, just to mention that the initiative has a good development. The Slavonic collection was ready and the opportunity for a free access of researchers was discussed. I must clarify that the notion of a free internet uploading was and is not a solution. The idea was and is to have regulations for the access to the cultural heritage of the monastery, and I believe this is the responsible and mature approach to cultural artifacts, especially when a huge amount is under question, which is the case with the Zografu monastery. It took more than a year of legal consultations, study of regulations, options and obstacles, meeting with people and institutions, representatives in order to decide where would be the best place for Zografu Digital Archive. Finally, Sofia University was chosen. Zografu Electronic Library at Sofia University Library was opened for visitors and researchers on the 23rd of June 2014. It is a separate archive physically placed in Philological Library and providing access to in electronic form to mainly Slavonic manuscripts of the Zografu monastery. The foundation of the archive was highly praised and acclaimed through the scientific community in Bulgaria. Many people of the older generations considered it a miracle. For people of my generation and those closely involved in the organizational process, realizing the fact was taking place slowly and mainly through the words of our mentors. The generational difference was not only a question of age, but more a question of personal historical memories of those who had lived during the Cold War and the rest of us who have only scarce impressions of that time. The popularity of Zografu Room, as it was called, grew and in the next year, 215, and considerable part of many other digital collections were adjoined. Vatican Apostolic Library collection, that's a big part of the Slavonic manuscript, that's not the whole collection certainly. The Reims Evangelium, the Ragumirna Monastery collection, also not the whole collection, some pieces. In Romania, the manuscripts of the Center of Slavo-Byzantine Studies, Professor Ivan Dujcev in Sofia, National Library Ivan Vazov in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, and Historical Museum Jordan Ivanov in Kyustendil. Thus all Slavonic collections of all these museums in Bulgaria. So in the year 216, the digital archive was enriched with the newly found Slavonic manuscripts of Zographou Monastery, over 160 18th and 19th century manuscripts, and with a collection of Natural Historical Museum in Sofia, which was a great achievement, I think. That is how that Zographou room became a unique archive of Slavonic manuscript comprising at the moment more than 600 manuscripts from the collections of different institutions in Bulgaria and Europe. This is the biggest digital archive in Bulgaria, and it is still growing. The next document, parts of the Zographou Monastery archive to be included, are Greek manuscripts of the monastery, Byzantine archive, Moldavian archive, Ottoman archive, and others. Slavonic Middle Ages archive, that's also to the archives, 18th and 19th century archives, all prints, etc. I'd like to mention another aspect of the ideas for the development of the Zographou room, a search and collection of digital copies of the documents connected to Mount Athos and Zographou Monastery. The name but a few, these are documents issued by or for Mount Athos, like documents reflecting relations with Austro-Hungary, Russia, Moldavia, modern states in the Balkans, Greece, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. I'd like to point out another reason for placing the Zographou room at the university. Now it is accessible not only for researchers as any other archive, but also for educators and students. As a part of an educational process, the materials in it are in active use in the formation of the next generation of researchers, educating a responsible and mindful attitude towards the historic past. Students have the opportunity literally to get in touch with the past that makes it easier to comprehend and experience the multiple layers and aspects. For example, by seeing a manuscript, bachelors could realize that every text had written in hand, and that computers are in use for the last 50 years. Before that, for about 100 years, there were typewriters, and before that, for many centuries, everything was handwritten. Master students could use in their education manuscript for studying paleography and ecology, and doctoral students could receive research tasks on a particular text. The research experience from the tutorials will develop different scientific branches, paleographical, textological, etc. I mean the undeveloped Slavonic documental paleography for the Moldavian and Romanian charters and so on. So the main purpose of Zographou Digital Archive is to be in use and materials to reach the students, and why not even to broader audience. The vision that we have for Zographou room is not of a room with some working places for but a few keen researchers, scrutinizing a specific problem, but a virtual place and space where historic understanding of young people is coined. The interests of a broader public could be gained by keeping different databases where information for prominent and minor beneficiaries is gathering. For example, prosopographical database with names of monks, superiors, decay, prods, donators, pilgrims, and so on. Second, toponymical database which includes name of places, villages, towns in the Balkans, Mount Athos, and Asia Minor to Moldavia and Russia, names of monasteries, pilgrimages, taxes, etc., that are part of manuscripts found in the monastery's archives. The third one, terminological database, title, administrative terms from the monastic institute, and secular heresy from 10th to 20th century on the Balkans that has certain links to Mount Athos, and as first a chronological database which is an integrative diachronic approach to the whole archive. That is the way for an ordinary man to get in touch and realize the usefulness of such an archive. This is the way to achieve a better understanding of life path and deeds of distinguished people, to know more about the history of the monasteries, to follow tendencies in cultural and economic development of Zographou monasteries through the centuries. And this could be done by anyone who is interested and has internet access. The complex approach would provide a necessary texture to the past, and the past would be firmly situated on the Balkans in European map of cultural and historical heritage. I would like to conclude that this scale of complexity is only possible because of the joint efforts of researchers coming from different backgrounds and the brotherhood of the monastery. This makes the initiative and experience of Zographou Monastery unique in research and educational practices in the Balkans. This is still much to be done and many efforts to be made for the successful realization of the aims and purposes. A lifetime, even of many people, is not enough, but when the foundations are put and perspectives are marked out, the proliferation will follow and the fruits will come. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this information of important initiative and on its perspectives also.